When trucks stop, business stops. Every breakdown, every delay ripples across America's supply chain. That's where we come in, to keep fleets moving. Cox Automotive is uniting FleetNet and Fleet Services into one nationwide force. 65,000 service providers, 1,600 expert technicians, and a team coordinating every move. From preventive maintenance to emergency roadside assistance, our unified team will deliver unmatched scale and local accountability, on the road, in the shop, and everywhere in between. From Washington, D.C., this is RoadSigns, with your host, Mike Freese.
Welcome to this episode of RoadSigns, a podcast series from Transport Topics that explores the trends and technologies that are shaping the future of trucking. Before we get started, I'd like to remind our listeners that you can check out our reporting from the TMC meetings and other industry events this year at ttnews.com. or gain access to our full industry coverage by subscribing to Transport Topics. If you're not a subscriber, you can sign up at ttn.ws/TT subscribe or text TT subscribe to 571-622-0001. It is the elusive goal that every fleet manager chases, but can never quite catch: perfect uptime. Between rising costs, new tech, and the daily grind of keeping trucks moving, fleet maintenance provides constant pressure from every angle. As technologies evolve, they also become the new factors behind uptime and downtime today. So for this episode, we'll ask, how can smarter maintenance, data, and technology fill the gaps in fleet maintenance? We'll dig into all of that with two gentlemen who know a thing or two about fleet repair. From Cox Automotive, Matt Trapp, Vice President of Operations, and Alex Fraser, Vice President of FleetNet. Welcome to the show, gentlemen.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Not a problem at all. I often love having guys such as yourself on in the fleet maintenance space. Since that's my beat, and I usually love to cover these particular topics. So I'm glad to have you guys on. Let's get right into it. When we talk about preventive maintenance, and just in the maintenance in general, fleet maintenance in general, there's often the pain points for fleets and what they are, the hurdles that they have to overcome, and it's evolved over time. What those pain points pretty much are. From your guys' experience in the field, what are those particular pain points that fleets are talking about now? And if they have shifted in the last few years, are they more operational, financial, or more technology driven?
Sure. Thanks again for having us. And this is Alex. I'll start off.
Okay.
I think right now it's absolutely more around the operational and financial, just in the sense that all these fleets are feeling such pressure to stay on the road right now that that makes it tough of when do you maintain it. And obviously we believe in a healthy maintenance program and want to help all of our fleet customers execute on that. But the reality for every fleet out there right now, with all of the crazy financial pressures that have been levied upon them over the last couple of years, if there's any type of movement or revenue they can generate off that asset, they're going to go chase it, and they probably need to, right? And so balancing that on the financial /op side with running a really healthy fleet maintenance program, look, it's tough, and we recognize that, and that's where we are so thankful to partner with all the fleets that we get to try to help them navigate that balance in what is almost certainly one of the more challenging environments they've all operated within.
Okay. Well, this next question is for either one of you, Alex or Matt. How much of that pain point equation is about reactive maintenance versus preventive planning?
Hey, it's Matt. I would say a lot of it has to do with the interplay between those two. As Alex talked about, there's all these cost pressures on the fleet owners, and they're trying to do everything they can to squeeze every bit out of the business. and it's easy to kind of cut the maintenance line because it's a hard cost. It's really hard to then see what is the ripple effect through to uptime and what's going on. Do I end up overspending because I didn't do enough of it up front in the proactive standpoint, just doing preventative maintenance? And what we find is that we have our own fleet, both for our mobile technicians, about 1,200 mobile technicians, and then also our own cable fleet. That when we are diligent and rigorous, and we stay with the preventative side of it, and we just focus on it and stick to the plan, that through the long run, our cost basis goes down. But then it's hard when you get into these budget meetings and the finance guys are looking at a line item. They're saying, "Hey, can you squeeze more out of that and take that expense down?" It puts you in a bind as to making that trade off of what do I throw out the window in terms of being proactive versus do I just gamble and take it as a reactive when something breaks down on the other side. So I think that's a time old equation there, balancing act that everybody has to do, and you just got to stay true to it and stay more on the proactive side. That's our viewpoint.
So, staying on that proactive side, how do fleets effectively measure that uptime, and what type of strategies can directly translate into having into more uptime?
Yeah, I mean, look, there's obviously the key metric of breakdowns between PMs and stuff like that I think most professional fleets look at. But at the end of the day, right, the metric that matters the most is, was your revenue impacted, right? So most of our fleet customers out there, big or small, recognize what each fleet asset delivers for them in revenue each day. And so there can be all sorts of calculators and KPIs and everything else. But at the end of the day, like, did you generate revenue today? Like the most simple, basic question of any business. And I think when it comes down to it, that's where we are really trying to elevate the conversation with a lot of our customers, is actually exactly what Matt was just talking about. How do we take from looking at it as an expense and just an expense to a revenue enabler? Because I think when that starts to happen, well, if you look at a revenue enabler, well, you know who else is a revenue enabler? Sales, right? Like, and we invest in salespeople, and we talk about salespeople, and we do things like President's Club and spiffs and all these things to really drive our salespeople to deliver more revenue. Well, if we start to look at our fleet as revenue enablers and not expense, how do we invest in it? How do we start to talk about it differently? Because I think all of a sudden that conversation that Matt was talking about around where do you invest in PM? Where do you invest in new equipment? Where do you invest in maybe a slightly nicer part or a little bit more expensive tire or, I mean, there's so many what ifs on that, but why do you do that? Because if it prevents one breakdown or two breakdowns and your revenue is X per truck per day, all of a sudden it starts to pay for itself very quickly.
That's a great point you made about the buy-in of this, and just the thought dynamic when it comes to how maintenance is approached. That's what I mean. That's what that's sounding like, and it's just sort of the what, but the question seems to be concentrated in the how. Is that the right way to kind of assess the situation that you just talked about?
I'd say a little bit. Yeah, I mean, yes, but I would go one click further. Like, there's a very old phrase that, any operator who works with a fleet knows, and we'll get there ugly if we have to get there ugly, but we're going to get there. Right. And just that idea of getting there ugly, they find a way. We find a way. We are a business full of operators, and whether that's the actual driver, an owner operator, pulling a trailer, or whether it's the customer where they're delivering freight to, or the guys in the warehouse who are loading up the trailer. This is a business full of people who get it done. Right. And so I think in the spirit of always getting it done, what we end up doing is we end up putting Band-Aids where we don't need them. Right. And so how have we used that grit, and how has that grit almost probably covered up where we can be smarter, where we can have a more thoughtful plan around maintenance and operations and where those can marry together and serve one another rather than be in conflict of one another.
The point that you just made, it seems that it could be explained in just the amount of data that the fleets they're having, and just in talking with fleet operators, it seems that the whole paralysis by analysis is really the stumbling block when it comes to performing maintenance and really trying to pinpoint where the challenges are within the maintenance dynamic within a fleet, and fleets are swimming in data. So how do you help them translate that data into actionable uptime strategies?
Yeah, I think, to steal a phrase from a customer that we met with recently, less is more. Sometimes, and as you said, there's just a plethora of like data and analytics and all these new technologies and things, and you can get overwhelmed, and you really just need to boil it down to 2 to 3 KPIs. You get beyond that, it gets really hard to focus. And from what I see, some of the best operated fleets, the best run fleets in the world, they are crystal clear as to what that number one metric that trumps everything else. Like if it comes down to it, and it's, for the most part, it'd be like delivery, delivery time. How often are we meeting the promise of, whether it's, packages or lumber or whatever, if we say it's going to be there, that it's there by that time? Or is it, how much revenue are we delivering on a daily basis out of this store? The ones that do it great are the ones that are crystal clear as to what measure it rules them all. And less is more there. I don't know, Alex, you got anything?
Yeah, I mean, look, connected. We talk a lot about connected. We have exceptional connected vehicle partnerships when it comes to over-the-air telematics, when it comes to multi-camera solutions that help prevent, nuclear verdicts against fleets, when it comes to routing. There's so many amazing things out there. But honestly, where we love connected the most right now is, can you tell me what side of the interstate you're on when you are broken down? Because we live here in Atlanta, Georgia, right? And for those of the listeners that have not been to Atlanta at 5:00 on any day, or in the middle of the weekend, or any time that someone is alive and driving, there's always traffic. And so what that means is, if you end up on the wrong side of 285, which is the big highway that goes around Atlanta, it could take a tow truck operator 45 minutes to get back to the other side of the interstate just to help the truck that's broke down. And so, yes, we see so many opportunities on the connected vehicle space, but honestly, just location, back to what Matt said, let's start simple. Can we always end up where the right asset is, the asset that we're trying to serve? And that's just as true from a PM standpoint as it is a breakdown. I use a breakdown example for Atlanta, but heck, you go to a big yard where there's 300 trailers scattered about. Can we use the connected trailer to just find out which one we're supposed to go do the inspection on, or which one needs the help on the door, right? Because if we're searching around for the trailer for 30 minutes, that's 30 minutes that we're not helping that fleet with maintenance on a different asset, right? So the location's an easy thing to kind of pick on or utilize, but it also highlights that sometimes we kind of think about, the far off galaxies of what could be, and we skip some of the ways that we can immediately make improvements with just the most basic information.
Alex, I like the example that you used on 285, having to conduct a repair there. And we this story is in the latest edition of Transport Topics Calibrate, where we're talking about roadside safety when it comes to maintenance. And what you had discussed was really hit the nail when it comes to the the procedures that fleet technicians have to go have to perform in making these remote repairs, and it's just having your mind on the repair, and then also being aware that you have to be safe on this busy road, and especially in Atlanta, as you were just mentioning, the traffic. So there's so many things to think about. I mean, I'm sorry, I just kind of went off in a little tangent there because it's just
Well, if you don't mind, I'd actually love to build on your tangent, right? So,
go right ahead.
Yeah, so we go see a lot of our service riders very often, right? And recently we were down in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and we were seeing our friends at Sargent's, and they're outside of Dallas, and I got to know one of their operators while I was there. A lot of our guys were talking, I guess, important business stuff, but I just sat down with one of the drivers, and his name's Truman, and he's talking to me about his son's football team and how all the dads had just gone and painted the helmets, and how exciting, because that's sort of what you do as a senior. You paint the helmets with your son. And when we walk out of there, you realize the most important thing that any of us can do is, yes, Truman's an exceptional operator and he rides that truck around and he helps other truck drivers who need help. But the most important thing we need to do is make sure Truman gets there safely, Truman's able to work safely, and that Truman gets home safely, right? Because this last weekend, at the International Towing Hall of Fame and Museum was the museum weekend when we add all the names to the wall of the towing operators around the world who didn't come home. And, Cox Automotive is super thankful and grateful to get to be a big part of that. But it's also a somber reminder that we have colleagues, we have friends, we have partners who every day are out on the road that unfortunately don't make it home. And so location is not, yes, it's an easy example, but literally everything we can do to get to that recovery 5 minutes, 1 minute, 30 seconds earlier means that our operator and the driver in the truck are both going to be on the side of the road for less time, which means their probability of getting home safely increases. So yeah, this is not just something that we like to banter about. It's not just something that we think makes for more efficient business. This is something we're passionate about because the most important job is get home the way you left.
Most definitely. When you factor in the whole process of fleet maintenance, when it comes to repair and the predictive maintenance of it, but at the end of the day, it is about safety, and there's so many aspects, and we just touched upon technology and telematics and predictive analytics. And that really has changed the game for maintenance and uptime. But however, there are other technologies that have somewhat become a double-edged sword, or maybe they have some benefits, but they also have some thorns as well. So, I'm thinking of electrification and ADAS and just new vehicle tech in general. In your guys' opinion, either Alex or Matt, you can take this one on. Those particular technologies that I just mentioned, have they helped or complicate the uptime equation in all this?
Yes, would be the answer.
You short answer.
Yeah, I think some of those technologies are incredible with how they help with fuel efficiency. They help with safety, as we've talked about, and they've just changed the game in terms of reliability for a lot of vehicles, and but it does come with more complications. I mean, they're just way more complicated machines. And what we find, in particular with our own fleets, is then you get into more opportunities for things to go wrong, more training that you have to do because now there's different systems and it's more varied across, and you have to stay up with the training to make sure that you're being current. But then just warranty issues as well, and navigating warranties and new builds and all that gets to be can be a headache. I think it's worth it in the long run for the benefits that we get out of it in terms of the industry, lower costs, society, all of it. But it's not without its complications for sure.
When trucks stop, business stops. Every breakdown, every delay ripples across America's supply chain. That's where we come in to keep fleets moving. Cox Automotive is uniting FleetNet and Fleet Services into one nationwide force, 65,000 service providers, 1,600 expert technicians, and a team coordinating every move. From preventive maintenance to emergency roadside assistance, our unified team will deliver unmatched scale and local accountability, on the road, in the shop, and everywhere in between.
One of the things, is having technology be a double-edged sword in the way things are, especially with AI. This trend seems to be growing by the month and year. I just kind of wanted to get your guys' opinion on that particular technology, and just sort of, we've seen the benefits of this, and we've heard what it can do for the industry, but also there comes to a point where maybe it's saturation, or maybe it's just the viability of AI, or whether it can be efficient in the fleet maintenance segment. My question is, will we be able to find? I mean, I think we will be able to find that balance, but I mean, where would that come from? I mean, in the sense of, how can we use AI more effectively and efficiently when it comes to the fleet maintenance?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think a lot of people are struggling with it. We struggle with it, and we're going to, as these models continue to evolve. We had a group of our managers in over the summer and put them in front of some of our technology people talking about AI. And you could tell across the room that there's the skeptics, there's the ones that are on board, and then majority are kind of in the middle. But the most important comment that came out of that discussion was, and this is, a bunch of managers of technicians in the room, is we said, look, AI is not going to replace you. AI is not going to replace the technician. It's the manager and it's the technician who are using AI who could end up replacing you. And so we view it in our business, it can be an amplifier. Yeah, it hallucinates, you need to double check it. But man, it can skim through things really quickly and synthesize it. It can help you understand, repair estimates on a truck really quickly. There's things that we're playing around with and utilizing it and getting it embedded to our systems where we think it can only help amplify what we offer as a service. It can also help increase your safety awareness. It can provide these reminders of, oh yeah, remember to do this ahead of doing this next step. So we're trying to find those little incremental improvements within our business. Like I said, it's not going to replace the technician in no way, shape, or form, but I think if it can help make them just a little bit better or a little bit safer, that it's going to be worth it at the end. I don't know, Alex, you're the guru around AI. So.
Oh, guru. That means I've been using it a week longer than Matt. But it is wild, right? Like you can go on to any of the AI tools, and you can build a whole new system, right? You can build a tool, you can build a widget, you can build a calculator. But now that you get into some of the newer AI technologies, like this agentic AI type stuff, the idea that it can start to, with no assistance, once you design it, go and look at your data and bring things back to you that you didn't even think to ask. That's where I think for fleets, I mean, look, it's scary, it's weird, it's kind of just so different, but it's also very powerful. Because I think, like Mac just said, it's not that the people are going away, but you might get replaced by somebody who knows how to use it really well. Because if you have a data analyst who's looking through all those, troves and troves of data you referenced a minute ago, one person can only do so much. But if all of a sudden that same analyst has 16 different agentic AI bots looking at the data, well, now you're not getting information from just the analyst. You're getting the information from the analyst plus his 16-person army that he built to go look through all the data, right? And so, I see articles sometimes in transport topics, sometimes in other things. There's AI built into some of these cameras where, how they work now is different. They're no longer talking about accident recreation to help fleets avoid unnecessary or incorrect litigation. But now they're talking about how can we use these cameras to prevent an accident, right? So what are the telltale signs that are happening in the midst of a driver driving where you can actively communicate back to the driver and say, hey, before something happens, do this or do that, right? So, I mean, look, it will impact this. I mean, it's impacting our world, right? And so it's going to impact everything in it. And do I think, that everything goes away? No, but how we use it and how we allow ourselves to be more efficient or smarter with this riding shotgun is where we will, I think the fleets, the service riders, the fleet management companies, anybody in our space who, has a lot of data in and around them, the folks that use it well are the ones that will be differentiated.
That is definitely one of the biggest opportunities for fleet maintenance, with the discovery and cultivation of AI, and it's going to be really interesting to see where this is going to lead the segment in maybe the 5-10 years down the road. But my one last question that I want to ask you, gentlemen, is about those opportunities. Aside from AI, where do you see those opportunities, the biggest opportunities to reduce fleet time over the next 5 or 10 years? Where do you guys see this particular dynamic heading?
I think we touched on it in the beginning. It's a mind shift.
Okay.
We did a survey of a lot of our fleets, a lot of the fleets that are out there, and you ask them, like, where are you kind of in the evolution of that, preventative versus reactive, and the ones that are crystal clear and understand that, what are the KPIs to maximize uptime, and it's not just a cost center, that the fleet can be a strategic advantage for them, for their business, for their customer service, for their core business, that it's not just a cost center. The ones that have made that transition and that mind shift, those are the ones that seem to be the most successful in driving down their total cost of ownership as a byproduct of it, but really increasing their uptime. That I think is going to be the evolution we're going to see. I don't know, Alex.
Yeah, I mean, look, it was Bill Gates who said, like, nothing will change as much as you think in the next 2 years, but it'll change way more than you think over the next 10. I think that's one of his quotes. And so 5 years obviously is squarely in between that. Like, there are autonomous trucks out there right now that are driving themselves around town. And that's great, right, until it shows up at the loading dock, because there's no driver inside that truck to unload the truck. So who absorbs that expense, right? The restaurant who's receiving the food, or the Walmart who had the truck show up at the back of it? I don't know, right? Like, I mean, so that's just one simple question, right? But I think the bigger question around, downtime and fleet maintenance overall is, I don't think that we fully figured out how all the parts are going to work. Is the parts infrastructure going to work the same way as we move to some of these vehicles have a lot less parts, but they have a lot more expensive parts, right? So what's the distribution of those parts? Who's going to carry those parts on their balance sheet? I mean, there are some pretty significant things to figure out between here and there. And I think it's important to think about those. But at the same time, I think one thing that gets lost in that is there's opportunities right now with the fleets and the trucks and the trailers and the equipment that we have on the road right now. There's opportunity right now to use VMRS codes, to use the AI that's available, to use the connected vehicle data to help improve how a fleet works today. And exactly like Matt said, I think if we get good at using the tools that are available for us today and get better just with that, then whatever comes down the pipeline over the next several years, if you're already in that mindset of not necessarily resisting the change, but embracing it and figuring out how it can be helpful and be a differentiator, then yeah, whatever comes, you'll be ready for.
Well, that's a nice bow to wrap up this conversation, guys. We've been speaking with Matt Trapp, Vice President of Operations, and Alex Fraser, Vice President of FleetNet. Guys, thank you very much for this conversation, and thanks for making us smarter.
Thanks
for having us.
Before we close, let's take a moment to revisit our previous question. How can smarter maintenance data and technology fill the gaps in fleet maintenance? First, a big thanks to Cox Automotive's Matt Trapp and Alex Fraser for joining us on the RoadSigns podcast. They shared some insights about how the industry is currently seeing fleet repair and maintenance. As mentioned, perfect uptime is the goal. However, no one thing is ever perfect. Even with the advances in repair tools and software, both men stated that cost pressure is one of the main points that fleets face when handling maintenance issues. As Alex Fraser pointed out, in order to move forward in terms of technology, we need to step back, mainly by using the tools that have been available to take advantage of new technologies that are here and soon to come. If you enjoyed this episode of Road Signs, please let others know. Rate and review us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Feel free to reach out to the Road Signs team on X at TT Road Signs or reach me at Michael V. Fries. You can email us at share@ttnews.com. We'll read them and respond daily. Also, let us know how we're doing by texting TT Survey to 571-622-0001. And of course, we'll be back with a new episode of Road Signs. Until then, I'm Michael Fries. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for joining us. Road Signs is a Transport Topics production.